All right, what is up, folks? Welcome back to another episode of the Help Me Understand podcast. I'm your host, JK, and we are kicking off episode number 193 of Help Me Understand. Before getting into today's episode, I want to take a quick moment just to say thank you for choosing to press play on Help Me Understand. You certainly have no shortage of podcasts that you can listen to and or watch. Shout out to anybody who's watching here on YouTube. So I certainly never take it for granted that you chose to spend a few minutes pressing play and listening to the Help Me Understand podcast. So with that being said, let me go ahead and get into today's episode. And I'll start with giving you some context into why I have decided to utilize at least one episode each week over the month of February to share with you one or more things that a particular member of my family, most notably, I'm going to be covering one takeaway, one piece of, I guess we'll call legacy, that each one of my grandparents has left me. So as I think about how to really communicate where I'm wanting to come from with these particular episodes each week, specifically for the month of February, which is Black History Month, it really very transparently is rooted in two different things. One is wanting to leave some sort of a record where my kids, kids, if they have them, and anyone else going forward in the future who has access to this particular podcast, if they are ever wondering about something that has to do with the legacy of my family members, people who have affected me, they can certainly hear about those things from other people. And also, I want to ensure that they will forever be able to also hear it from my mouth. So I throw that out there just to say that anything that I'm going to share about either of my grandfathers, either of my grandmothers, is purely coming from my perspective and my perspective alone. So that's one, is to have a hand in the telling of the history of people that have been impactful in my life. The second reason, very transparently, is from my perspective, the telling of African American history is under attack in the United States. So the way that I look at it right now is I can either put a lot of energy into expressing frustration, or suppose it could be or I can craft a response that I believe will be pouring more energy into the solution instead of pouring more gas on talking about the problem. So this is my attempt to, instead of spending a few minutes talking about attempts that are being made to basically erase the history of African Americans in the United States of America, instead of spending time ranting and raving about that, I'm going to take the time to share with you from my own personal point of view, my own life and my own family piece of African American history. So that's it's the best way that I can try to explain it. So with that, each week over the month of February, I'm going to talk to you about a particular memory or legacy thought that I have from each of my grandparents. So I'm going to start with my grandfather on my mother's side, and his name is Samuel David Reynolds. And the way that I plan to do these episodes is just share a short memory with you, a little bit about their background from what I recall. I don't plan to make it about an obituary sort of situation where I'm reading dates and things like that. Again, it's just I could spend time and respect due to those who do take time to talk about prominent African Americans in United States history over Black History Month. I could take time to do that and talk about the different contributions that African Americans have made in the United States. I could spend time doing that. And also, I just wanted to do something a little bit different and share just my point of view from someone that I know personally. So let me tell you a little bit about my granddaddy Reynolds, who did pass in the early 2000s. So my granddaddy Reynolds served in the United States Army. So he served in the United States Army. He was the father of 3 children, my mother being one of them, my aunt, who has since passed, my Aunt Ellen, and then my uncle Sam. So he was a junior, and they used to call him Sambo. He unfortunately passed prior to me even being born. So a piece of his legacy that I remember that he passed down was the success of his children. So I mentioned that he had 3 children, one being my mother, one being my aunt, and one being my late uncle. And each of those folks made their mark in this country. So my uncle, Sambo, who passed away, he died in Vietnam, so he also served. My Aunt Ellen, who passed away, she worked for years, like decades, in the Veterans Affairs Administration. So from what I recall, she was really pivotal in a lot of the VA locations with helping veterans understand their benefits, take advantage of their benefits, like all of that sort of stuff. At the time, her husband was in the Air Force, so they moved quite a bit. She had quite an impact also. And then there's my mother, who I'm blessed to still have in my life today. She has made countless contributions, and continues to. She, most notably, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it, she's a giver and a contributor. And I know that she, for a while, worked for the Head Start program, really helping people there. I remember when I was growing up and in either junior high or high school, when we moved back to the States because we lived overseas for quite a while, she worked at Monroe Community College in Rochester, New York, where I grew up for a decent amount of time in junior high and high school, late junior high, and then all throughout high school. She worked at Monroe Community College, where she helped people study and take a GED course, basically, to get ready for the GED, taking the GED program or test, excuse me. So again, very common theme that I believe my grandfather left a legacy of, with impacting the contributions that his 3 children made. A specific thing that I would attribute to him, though, as far as what I recall growing up. So let me kind of set the scene for you. He lived in Alabama, in a small-ish, let's call it small to medium-sized town in Alabama. And the way that basically things went was, as I was growing up, I lived in Singapore and Malaysia from the age of, let's say about 8 or 9 years old until I believe I was about 14, somewhere around there. So about 5-ish years. So the way that it would go is we would be in Singapore and Malaysia or somewhere in Asia for the majority of the year. So if it was where we got a week off from school, that wasn't necessarily enough time to fly all the way home to the States and actually have a meaningful visit and then fly all the way back. So when we would come back to the States, that would be over the summer. So myself and my mom, and then when my brother was born, he's 8 years younger than me, and then my dad, we would fly back to the States, and we would spend the majority of our summer in Alabama. Occasionally, we would take a trip, like go to Disneyland, some different places like that. I remember a few trips like that. But regularly, like the summertime, that was our time to see our grandparents, our aunts and uncles, who all at that point were all pretty much living in Alabama, all, excuse me, about 45 minutes from each other. So a distinct memory that I have of my granddaddy Reynolds was every time that we would come home for the summer, what he would do, we would take a trip by his house because we would usually stay at my other grandfather's house or at my grandmother's house. And we would take a trip by his house and we would stop by, and he would always let me pick out something from the J.C. Penney catalog. So that was basically my going to be my Christmas gift each year, was picking out something from the J.C. Penney catalog. And I still remember to this day, one time he let me pick out. I think this was with the help of my mom. I picked out this like radio, like a transistor type radio, and I thought it was like the coolest thing ever. I can legit actually picture this thing. So I remember he let me buy a radio from the J.C. Penney catalog, and then for a number of years running, and I was just telling my daughter Ava this story like a few months ago. For a few years running, he always, no matter when we stopped by his house, he always had the refrigerator stocked with at least a few cans of this Donald Duck orange juice. And I don't know what it was about this Donald Duck orange juice, but that was like the best orange juice I had ever had, and it may certainly be the best orange juice I've ever seen in my life. Don't at me about what chemicals were in there. I have no idea. I just knew when we were stopping at Granddaddy Reynolds' house, I'd be able to talk to him about what I wanted from the J.C. Penney catalog for Christmas that year, and then I would be able to pick up some Donald Duck orange juice. And I share that story just because he left a legacy of raising children who were contributors to society. He himself served in the military. I know for sure that he, I believe, was in the Korean War, if I remember correctly. Again, I said I wasn't going to make this like an obituary type thing. It's really more about just sharing a memory of someone. So, really raising a family of givers and contributors, and also just consistency. Like that is one of the things that will likely be a common theme in each person that I talk about, all of my grandparents. And it's only fitting that I start off with him, because consistency was definitely the name of the game. I knew absolutely every time that I stopped by his house, I'd be able to pick something out of the catalog, and I would be able to get myself some Donald Duck orange juice. So, yeah, that is legit what I wanted to spend a few minutes sharing with you from today's episode. And yeah, I just wanted to share with you a little bit about someone in Black history that means something to me, and potentially maybe it will give you a perspective as you think about how you the listener, and I have no idea what race you are, what gender you are, what your background is, what your thoughts or your views are. I have zero idea. Regardless of where you stand, what I hope is that with each of these episodes that I'm going to do in the month of February, and again, I'll do one each week, that I provide just a glimpse into the contributions that maybe don't get as much publicity, and actually don't get anywhere near the publicity as some of the quote unquote major accomplishments, the inventions, the celebrity, all absolutely important. And also their contributions of regular, everyday people that mean just as much, especially as I think about my grandparents growing up, many of them in the early 1900s, like legit early 1900s. As I think about them and all being in the South, and the things that they must have witnessed and gone through, and the fact that all of them indelibly left a mark on myself, and I certainly can't speak for anyone else. However, I do believe that my brother would likely say the same. My cousins would likely say the same. So just wanted to share with you a piece of Black history during Black History Month from a bit of a different angle. So if you've stuck around this long to listen, thank you. I appreciate it. And if you could, leave a rating and or review. Any sort of feedback that you have, definitely open to it. And tune in next week because I will be speaking on another family member. That'll be one of the episodes. We'll still have Tuesdays, which are going to be all about fitness. I've actually got a couple of conversations that are lined up with two returning guests to the podcast. So stay tuned for that. We've got some good stuff coming down the pipeline. So again, if you've listened this long, thank you for giving me the opportunity to share something that I believe is important to me and will be important to further generations from my family to come. So thank you again. Take care, and we'll talk to you next time.